The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you for joining us for CFP Board's Business Update webinar. I'm Dan Candura, your host today. For those of you who may not know me, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a practitioner and a certificate. I am a continuing education provider. I'm a former member of the Board of Directors for CFP Board and the former lead singer of Danny and the Clydes, the famous doo-wop group. 3 of those things are true. You'll have to figure out which one isn't. Today we're broadcasting live from Rose Wharf on the shores of Boston Harbor. We'll hear about CFP Board's current activities and plans, including updates on the status of CFP Board's work with FPA and NAFA in the Financial Planning Coalition, trying to influence the financial services regulatory reform efforts underway in Congress. We'll cover CFP Board's consumer outreach activities. And we'll cover some recent enhancements to the CFP certification, including the results of the 2009 job analysis study and the new financial planning development course requirement. Many of you have submitted questions, and we'll try to get to some of those during today's program. During today's webinar, you are invited to use the question and answer function on the right side of your screen to ask questions of our panelists. You may submit your questions at any time during the program. We will try to address as many questions as possible during a question and answer session at the end of the program. If the panel does not get to your question today during the broadcast, CFP Board will provide an answer to you as follow-up. We'll also have a few polling questions during today's presentation, and you'll be able to respond to the questions through the webinar interface, and we'll share a summary of your responses during the webinar. So, let's get started. Joining us today are Bob Glovsky, 2010 Chair of CFP's Board of Directors, Chuck Moran, 2010 Chair-elect of CFP Board of Directors and the Chair next year, and CFP Board's CEO, Kevin Keller. Welcome to all of our guests.
Hello, thanks, Dan.
Welcome, everyone. Tomorrow, July 17th, is the official 25th anniversary of the date CFP Board was established. That is a significant milestone for this organization and for our profession, given CFP Board's role. Bob, can you share your thoughts on the silver anniversary of CFP Board?
Be happy to, Dan, but I'd like to do it after you sing a little bit. It really is exciting to look back and see how far we've come. CFP Board and the financial planning profession have evolved significantly since I first worked with the CFP Board in the 1980s with the Board of Examiner. Back then, before 1985, the CFP certification was essentially an educational designation. One of the important challenges CFP Board was created to address was how to ensure that individuals who attained that certification met the ethical standards of providing financial planning with the best interests of the client. So it was in Denver on July 17, 1985, that leaders of our profession came together to establish the International Board of Standards and Practices for Certified Financial Planners, or the IBCFP, which was renamed Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards in 1994. The new organization quickly worked to set high standards of ethics and practice, and to establish a disciplinary and enforcement element to oversee those who earn the CFP, Certified Financial Planner, certification. This was an important step in helping the American public identify competent and ethical financial planners, as well as a critical part of our goal to create a bona fide profession. The requirements and standards of the CFP certification have been strengthened over the years. They remain relevant even in our rapidly changing professional world. They have become a highly respected professional achievement for those who work within the financial services industry. And consumers increasingly use CFP certification as the primary factor when choosing a professional to assist with their financial planning needs. I'd like to thank everyone who has guided and contributed to the CFP Board's work over the past 25 years. Together we have accomplished much. 25 years is a significant milestone, and I'm happy to be able to celebrate it with the CFP certificate community.
Thanks, Bob. Chuck, would you share your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I certainly couldn't agree any more with Bob. It's a privilege to be part of the CFP certificate community today, and it's a challenge and a daunting responsibility to serve in a leadership role at this important time in the CFP Board's history. The success of CFP certification wasn't a foregone conclusion. when the certification was created more than 25 years ago. Its success today is a testament to everyone who has worked to get the certification and who continues to demonstrate the principles and values of the CFP certification standards through their work. The American public has benefited greatly as a result of our coming together to establish financial planning as a profession and in our pursuit of high standards of ethics and competence represented by the CFP certification. And there's much more to come. I'm particularly proud of the leadership role the CFP Board has taken on issues related to public policy and consumer protection. Because of our efforts, we are now recognized by many, including policymakers, as a true advocate for the consumer. We've made significant strides toward the goal of having financial planning established as a recognized and regulated profession. It's exciting to see CFP Board expand its influence from a certification and standard-setting organization on to an organization that is embracing its potential as an advocate for the public's interest. Over the years, many have believed in the potential of CFP Board and the CFP certification to benefit greater segments of our country's population, and we are making good progress toward realizing that potential. The challenges, however, continue.
Thanks, Chuck. Kevin, as CEO of CFP Board of Standards, would you like to share your thoughts on this 25th anniversary?
You know, Dan, I started my fourth year with CFP Board, and one of the things that really was obvious to me right after coming to CFP Board was what a great resource that the organization has in the certificants and other professionals who volunteer their time to help us in the important work that we do. I believe that the volunteers truly are the greatest assets the organization has and are an important reason why the organization has had 25 successful years. The quality and expertise of our volunteers has been top-notch, and I have worked with 3 other organizations before coming to CFP Board. The quality of volunteers and I might say the willingness of volunteers to take time away from their business and their family in order to make a contribution to the profession in general and to the CFP certification specifically is unmatched in any other experience that I've had. Now, for those of you in the audience who may have considered but haven't yet volunteered for CFP Board, I would encourage you to do that. It's very easy. You just go to www.cfp.net/volunteers. We'll notify you when an opportunity arises, and we're making an active effort in 2010 to increase the number of volunteers that we have participating with the organization. And then for those of you who have volunteered and made contributions over the first 25 years, I encourage you to take a few minutes and share your memories with us. We're collecting comments and memories in honor of the 25th anniversary. We'd like for you to share your experiences about working with CFP Board, or share with us about what CFP certification has meant to you. You can share your thoughts at, once again, www.cfp.net/anniversary for more information. The comments we've received are really very inspirational. They paint a very clear picture of the pride and accomplishments the community of CFP professionals has accomplished.
Thanks, Kevin. It's wonderful that you're collecting those kinds of contributions from the past history of CFP Board. One of the newer developments in CFP Board's history is its engagement with national conversations on public policy. Financial regulatory reform legislation made headlines yesterday as it passed. And it looks like we have final legislation that we're all going to have to dig into and try to understand what's in that bill and how it affects all of us. What is your assessment of the progress CFP Board has made on that policy front, and what provisions of the upcoming legislation should CFP certificates be aware of? And Bob, would you start off for us?
I'd be happy to, Dan. You're right. We've come a long way. Since our last webinar in March, we've made significant progress on the policy front. We've continued to work with our partners in the Financial Planning Coalition, the Financial Planning Association, and NAPFA. We've been trying to advocate for a national oversight board to regulate financial planning. From the outset, we knew that that was an ambitious goal, and one that probably would surprise many within the financial services industry. We also knew that we had a historic window of opportunity to introduce the issue. And I emphasize the word introduce. That really is the correct word, as so many people have little or no understanding of what financial planning is all about. Many immediately think of investments when they hear the words financial planning, not acknowledging the broad range of services and advice that are part of our profession. So the reform efforts gave us a prime opportunity to educate policymakers and legislators about the need for regulation specific to financial planning. It also allowed us to raise the visibility of our profession to an influential group of people. And that was one of the reasons, you may remember, that we moved to Washington. We wanted to be able to influence policy and to raise our visibility. And we've been confident and consistent in positioning the Oversight Board as a common sense solution to a serious gap in regulation. But I believe most of us were still surprised at the level of success we actually did achieve. Both the House and the Senate versions of the financial regulatory reform legislation included provisions for a government accounting office study of the regulation and oversight of financial planning. And the study provisions remained in the final legislation that came out of the conference committee, and now, as Dan said, has been approved by both the House and, as of yesterday, the Senate, and on their way to the President for his signature.
Thanks, Bob. That study is not without both enthusiastic supporters and some skepticism among certificants. Chuck, can you tell us more about that study and what you expect to come from it?
Well, maybe the starting point is that historically the General Accounting Office, or the GAO as it is known, has a reputation for high quality and, in a city like Washington, an unpoliticized report. This study, the GAO study, will analyze the unique role financial planners play in providing comprehensive advice to consumers. It will identify gaps in regulation of financial planners, and it will provide recommendations for the appropriate regulation of financial planners. For those of you in the audience, the mere fact that I can keep saying financial planners and a government organization in the same sentence as being related to each other is a huge step forward in the recognition of financial planning as a profession. The study doesn't get us directly to CFP Board's goal of a National Oversight Board that would help establish financial planning as a recognized and regulated profession. But a study of this type is often the first step in major policy legislation. Sometimes that comes fairly quickly. Most of the time it's a first step in a long educational process that culminates in legislation. The GAO is required to make recommendations to 3 congressional committees. We expect that will lead to hearings and an introduction of legislation. We continue our work with our Financial Planning Coalition partners to serve as a go-to resource for the GAO as they conduct this study. We will work diligently to make sure it addresses the important issues related to the regulation of financial planning.
Thanks, Chuck. I know we'll all be watching closely to see what comes out of this study. I understand that the current legislation contains many other studies as well, including a study on the fiduciary standard. How does that study provision tie in with the Coalition's goals, Bob?
The Coalition, and more importantly the public, scored a win, we believe, with this fiduciary issue. The CFP Board and the Coalition have been vocal in support of a bona fide fiduciary standard for all who provide investment advice. This fiduciary standard is in our code of ethics, as you know, and it's also something that is very much a part of what we consider to be the GAO study and the gaps in financial planning regulation. From the outset, one of the Coalition's stated goals was to have financial planning delivered to the public with fiduciary accountability and transparency, serving the client's best interests first and always. Let me say that again. Have the financial planning delivered to the public with fiduciary accountability and transparency, serving the client's best interests first and always. This is probably the most contentious issue we've tackled thus far, so it's been wonderful to see the progress that was made. We worked closely on this issue with a broad coalition of consumer, state regulators, and industry organizations. These included the Consumer Federation of America, Fund Democracy, the Investment Advisor Association, NASA, and our coalition partners. We also experienced strong opposition from other coalitions, especially from the insurance industry. The insurance industry, as you know, is well known and well organized as a player on Capitol Hill. And I think it's safe to say that in light of their strong opposition, we were concerned that Congress would forego real reform in favor of another study. So our victory on this is worth celebrating. The Congressional Conference Committee, and now the law, chose to do more than simply propose further study of this already well-studied issue. Instead, they reduced the study to 6 months and adopted a provision authorizing the SEC, after conclusion of a study, to implement a fiduciary standard for broker-dealers who provide investment advice. Of critical importance to our fiduciary coalition was the statutory requirement that the same fiduciary standard required by the Advisors Act be extended to broker-dealers who provide investment advice. This is very promising development, and we'll be vigilant in our efforts to help guide the outcome of both the SEC study as well as the new fiduciary standard rule.
That is promising, Bob. And it's promising to see how well these coalitions work, bringing together financial planning organizations with consumer advocates and other industry organizations to work towards a common goal. Now, one of the groups you mentioned was NASA. I want to clarify for our audience that that's not the Space Administration. That's the National Association of State Securities Administrators. Some of you might be wondering whether we're going to put a financial planner on the moon. Understanding that federal regulatory reform initiative has required a great deal of attention and coordination, has CFP Board identified other issues as significant for the CFP certificate community, Chuck?
Yes. In recent months, CFP Board has addressed other policy issues that arose during our engagement with the federal regulatory reform process. In May, we responded to a request from the Department of Labor and Department of Treasury for information on lifetime income options for retirement plans. The departments issued the request in response to a serious concern about the ability of many Americans to manage their retirement savings to provide adequate income throughout their lifetime. Some had proposed that annuitization options could be added to commonly used retirement accounts, such as 401ks or IRAs, providing account owners with a guaranteed income stream. Some had proposed that it could help nudge people to take better preparations for retirement by making annuitization options mandatory or default features of retirement accounts. They proposed that it might have a similar effect to what auto enrollment has done for increased employee participation in retirement savings plans. CFP Board reviewed the proposal in detail, and most importantly, we conducted a survey of CFP professionals to provide input from the perspective of the financial planning practitioners. In other words, those of you on the ground. At the end, our position was to oppose proposals that would require mandatory or default annuitization options for defined contribution retirement plans and IRAs. Of the CFP professionals we surveyed, about 71% indicated that they use annuities at least occasionally to assist their clients to prepare for retirement. But interestingly, more than 90% of the surveyed respondents were opposed to the idea of retirement plan participants being defaulted into annuities. Another issue CFP Board addressed recently is the IRS efforts to register all paid tax return preparers. The IRS is setting up a registration process for tax return preparers that includes competency testing and continuing education requirements. The proposal provides specific exemptions to registered tax preparers, accountants, and lawyers on the grounds that they are already subject to education and testing requirements in areas related to tax return preparation. But it did not include CFP professionals among those exempt groups. CFP Board provided the IRS with a letter supporting their efforts to register all paid tax return preparers in an effort to increase, the objective of the IRS, to increase the taxpayers' access to competent and ethical tax return preparers. But we also raised important concerns about the proposed regulation. We are advocating that CFP certificates should receive the same exemption from exam and continuing education requirements afforded to attorneys and accountants, given the extensive education and testing components of the CFP certification process.
You know, there's something that's important here that I think we should take a moment and reflect on. One part of our involvement with the IRS was to engage on this process, but it really benefits CFP Board as we begin to establish our presence in Washington. The CFP Board staff requested a meeting with the IRS to brief them on our exam and continuing education requirements, and then to offer our expertise as they implement their proposed tax preparer registration. The IRS staff has now reached out to us on several occasions to learn more about how we administer a quality certification and credential bestowing process. So our experience on the policy front has had positive effects well beyond our legislative success. It has increased our profile in Washington, the hub of national policy discussions, and headquarters to a huge number of associations and organizations dedicated to working in the public's interest. We've also developed the capability to generate and coordinate grassroots support on our positions. Since we met in March, we've issued a number of action alerts that have mobilized CFP certificates to send nearly 2,500 messages to Congress in a very targeted and effective way. Our capability to get our message out rapidly and in a targeted, effective way is something we have improved greatly. We will continue to develop this capability as we address ongoing policy issues. And Dan, I'd like to thank those listening that have responded specifically to our appeals to contact Congress.
Thanks, Kevin. As one of those people who took up the opportunity to do that, I want to thank CFP Board for making it as easy as it was for me to be able to do that. It certainly didn't take a lot of time, and I felt like I was at least a foot soldier in the battle. Chuck?
You know, it's just rewarding to hear that we're doing that kind of thing and that the response out there is substantial. You know, I've heard for years certificants saying that they want to have some voice, and this is the voice, and it's coming directly from the certificates. Another development related to our policy work has been the consumer-oriented media outlets that have turned their attention to our work on behalf of the public. In the last few weeks, the fiduciary advocacy work of CFP Board and our coalition partners was featured in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and on Morningstar. We've also received attention in publications with political or policy orientations, which include what the regulators and the legislators read, the publications The Hill, Roll Call, and the Huffington Post. It's gratifying to see that our work is getting to a broader audience and that the perspectives of the financial planning profession are appreciated outside the financial services industry. Somebody is listening and paying attention.
Well, some of those people that are listening are also asking some questions. And one of the questions that comes in on CFP Board's public policy engagement, one viewer asks, how are the legislative positions that you take determined? Also, why do so few Republicans support the Financial Planning Coalition's position?
Well, I'm not sure of anyone has any hard data on political affiliations of those with opinions on the coalition's positions. And why so few Republicans support the legislation, I think you have to ask them. In my discussion with CFP certificates around the country, I don't think political affiliation has been a big factor in whether individuals support or question our positions. So I think the question may relate more to splitting votes in Congress along party lines rather than a comment on the views of CFP certificates with Republican affiliation. Within the financial planning profession, I think there's widespread recognition that it's simply not good, that anyone can hang up a shingle as a financial planner with no licensing or regulatory oversight. And there's widespread consensus that it's not good that some individuals providing investment advice can do so without adhering to a fiduciary standard. That's what the coalition's proposals seek to remedy, and I think those are pretty fundamental positions that cross political affiliations.
Thanks, Bob. Interesting to note that the three Republicans who crossed the aisle to vote and pass this bill, one of them is from here in Massachusetts, Scott Brown. The other two are Maine senators. Getting back to the first part of that question, though, about how legislative positions are determined, what is the process for taking legislative positions?
Well, and the coalition's work has truly been collaborative, and with each of the coalition organizations contributing to all of the group's work. And all of them are to be commended for the efforts that have been applied. CFP Board also has a public policy council that serves an advisory role on public policy issues affecting CFP Board, CFP certificates, and members of the public. In other words, we've expanded the listening that we're doing and expanded the discussion. The Council also works to identify opportunities related to those trends that CFP Board can consider addressing in a meaningful policy development. The members of the Council are a diverse group with experience in financial planning, financial service regulation, and legislation.
Another audience member asks, are you going to keep us abreast of the impacts of current congressional law changes?
Well, yes. The short answer is yes. I'm laughing because we know how important it is to keep the certificate community up to date. In fact, as we were working our way through financial services legislation, Dan, we made it an effort to every 4 to 6 weeks send out an update, even if there hadn't been a lot changed, because we know that perhaps there are people out there that don't read every email that comes from CFP Board, but we do encourage you to watch for these emails. We're going to make every effort to keep people in the loop about what's going on.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Keep it up. Now let's take a moment for a quick poll. On your screen is a question about whether you've had discussions with your clients about how financial federal regulatory reform efforts. We'll take a minute or two for you to respond, and then we'll share the results of the poll. The question is going to ask regulatory reform legislation with your clients, and we'll go silent for a minute while you take the opportunity to answer. Okay, before we move on, let's share the results of this polling question with you. And you can see that 41% of you have shared it, 51% of you have not, and for some, a small group of you, your clients are actually raising that issue with you proactively. So there is interest. It's pretty split there. A number of other questions we received from the audience relate to CFP Board's works on consumer outreach. What initiatives does CFP Board have underway to reach consumers and increase recognition of the CFP certification and the value of working with financial planners who are certified?
Consumer outreach continues to be a central priority of the CFP Board, and we have several initiatives underway, Dan, so I'm glad you asked the question. One coming up very soon is the Financial Planning Days program. We've partnered with the Financial Planning Association, the Foundation for Financial Planning, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors to organize events for consumers in up to 30 cities across the country during October. The events will be similar to the CFP Board's financial planning clinic events, with workshops on key financial planning topics combined with CFP professionals volunteering to provide pro bono consultation to the public. These events will be free and open to all and will focus particularly on benefiting the underserved young adults and individuals and families facing special circumstances or crises. We've been successful in our past efforts to bring the financial planning community together for these types of events. Working with city mayors and local governments gives us a way to more effectively get the word out to the public. This is a great opportunity to get involved, so please keep an eye out for invitations to participate in Financial Planning Day events scheduled in your area.
In addition to that, Bob, Eleanor Blaney, who continues her work as CFP Board's consumer advocate, is reaching out to national consumer media with messages about the importance of financial planning and working with financial planning professionals. I'd encourage everybody on this call to look for Eleanor Blaney. Might look at her book, look for opportunities to see her as she appears in national media. She presents our profession in a way that I think will make you all proud. Eleanor's video series on the new financial realities was released earlier this year, and it will be featured on our website on a continuing basis. Our consumer advocate has become a regular commentator and contributor to several online web portals focused on personal finance, including AARP's lifeturner.org site. More national media outlets have begun to turn to our consumer advocate for insights on personal finance issues of the day. We focus special attention on sharing our consumer advocate's messages through broadcast media outlets. Eleanor held a satellite media tour featuring advice on how couples can avoid money conflicts and how a certified financial planner professional can help. The feature was aired on more than 200 times in 196 media outlets across the country. And most of the media outlets that aired the broadcast on television also broadcast the feature by radio and online. We have also been working with other organizations that have significant online presence and recognition among consumers. Arrangements with popular personal financial websites such as Bankrate.com, Forbes.com, and NASDAQ.com have made searchable listings of CFP certificates available to the public. CFP Board also continues to distribute information about financial planning and certified CFP certification to the public with free financial planning resource kits, a monthly e-newsletter, and webcasts and video series. Many of you have seen some of those. Those of you who haven't need to spend more time trolling around the CFP Board website. So you can visit www.cfp.net/learn to see the resources we make available to consumers. There are many consumers out there looking for quality financial advice, and we're putting resources out there to help those individuals find CFP certificates to work with.
Thanks. It sure sounds like there's been a lot of activity in the consumer outreach area. When you look at the entirety of the work in this area, do you think we're close to making CFP certification top of mind when consumers think of financial planning, Bob?
Reaching out to the public is central to CFP Board's mission and purpose. We know consumers are out there looking for quality financial advice, especially in this time of uncertainty due to the recent recession and new dynamics we're seeing take place during the recovery. We believe that one of the best ways for consumers to improve their lives for the long term is to establish an ongoing, trusting relationship with a qualified financial planning professional. And we believe the CFP certification is a primary factor people need to look for when seeking out a financial planner. We've put information and resources out there to help consumers find CFP certificates to work with. We've organized events that deliver consumers with introductory experiences of what it's like to work one-on-one with a CFP certificate. But is what we're doing enough? This is one area where it's really impossible to do too much. At the same time, it's an area where you can spend immense amounts of time and money. So if those resources are not channeled the right way, you can come away with little to show.
You know, Bob has really hit the nail on the head. One of the observations I made soon after coming here is that the long-term viability of CFP Board is contingent upon the general public beginning to have the same level of appreciation for the value and rigor of CFP certification that, let's say, regulators have. We know the consumer finance press understands and values CFP certification, and others in the financial services industry understand, value, and appreciate CFP certification. So our opportunity is really to carry that message more broadly to the consumer public. During my time with CFP Board, I've made it a priority to get out and talk with certificants around the country and to listen and hear what's on folks' minds. Many of you may have seen or maybe even have attended one of our certificate connections. These are town hall style meetings. We've done them in almost 24 cities during the last year and a half alone. And here's what's going on. Almost without fail, one or more certificants at these meetings will usually say something like, we need more promotion, or we need more advertising, or we need you to do more to tell the story. Let me assure you that message is being heard. You know, there's no doubt that the value of CFP certification increases as consumer awareness and preference for the certification increases. Based on your input, one of CFP Board's goals for 2010 is to conduct a feasibility study to determine the merit of an advertising and public relations campaign that increases consumer awareness, preference, and use of CFP professionals. This is an endeavor we're committed to doing right. We don't want to jump in with a short-lived advertising campaign that provides limited results. To reach the public today, you really need a coordinated and integrated promotion and education campaign focused on a recognizable and relatable brand. We want a high-quality campaign that will resonate with consumers, and we want a campaign that reinforces and supplements the marketing efforts of the more than nearly 62,000 CFP professionals across the country. All of this is requiring careful planning, and our staff has been working hard on it. I'm pleased to share with you several steps we're taking toward making this a reality. During the recent months, we've hired a managing director of marketing and business development with very strong consumer marketing and branding credentials. We've selected a marketing and branding agency, and we've conducted some initial qualitative research with both consumers and CFP professionals, as well as financial advisors who are not yet certified. Our new Managing Director of Marketing and Business Development is Tom Crowder. He brings a wealth of marketing experience to us at CFP Board. Over the course of his career, he's worked at a number of different advertising agencies and also worked as Vice President of Marketing at Verizon, where he helped Verizon surpass AT&T as the most respected and preferred communications provider in the category. I'm very happy to have Tom on our team and look forward to working with him, and the certificate community will get to know him more in the future. He's really hit the ground running in his work to help us increase the public's awareness and preference for the certification brand. Tom led our search for an advertising and marketing agency, and I'm pleased to share that we are now working in Washington, D.C. with the D.C. office of Arnold Worldwide. If you're familiar with the world of marketing and advertising, you may know Arnold, and if you're not familiar with the agency world, you'll still recognize their work. They're headquartered here in Boston, but Arnold has some of America's most well-known brands, including Hershey's, McDonald's, and Amtrak. In the financial services arena, you'll know them. You'll know their work with Fidelity and Progressive, the big green line that, at least in Washington, we see on billboards and on TV, as well as Progressive Insurance with Flo, the cashier, who is so memorable. In our initial planning with Arnold to make the most effective use of our resources, we've placed much of our emphasis on research. We've, as I said, conducted qualitative research, including the focus groups, and there's more yet to come. This all will provide us with a foundation that will help us determine the feasibility of conducting a successful campaign. The research that we're doing will guide us in developing the best approach, and the next step really for us at the staff level is to get the input of the certificate community. We want CFP professionals to be engaged in our marketing and advertising efforts, and we want to hear from you. We want to know what resources we can provide individual certificates to allow and encourage you to participate in the campaign, and we want to ensure that the campaign meets the needs of the certificate community. We'll be seeking your input on how best to fund the type of advertising campaign that can have a true impact on the public. So we want and need to hear from certificates, Dan, and we're going to be asking, and there'll be multiple opportunities over the next 3 or 4 months to provide input to CFP Board.
Thanks, Kevin. I know many CFP professionals will be very excited at the prospect of a new marketing campaign and happy to hear that this kind of work is underway and anxious to learn about how they can share their input. Chuck, can you fill us in on that?
Well, I just want to pound on what Kevin said, that we need to hear from you. One way is through an online survey that will soon be available. So I'd ask you to watch your email for the survey invitation, and I'd repeat that. Watch your email, and when you see it, respond to it. It makes a difference. If we get a broad response rate, it provides better input for us, and it also provides some credibility to what we're doing internally and externally. So anytime we're asking you for something, it's because we're going to use that information, and we appreciate your cooperation. We will also be holding in-person meetings, including our certificate connection events and meetings at other forums, such as the FPA conference in Denver this October. We'll keep you up to date with notifications through emails and newsletters. You will have multiple opportunities to take a look at where we are heading and let us hear your thoughts. Once we have reviewed your input, we will begin marketing planning, concept development, and consumer testing. And we want to bring you along, to keep you involved as we move into the next steps of this project. I'm truly excited about the possibilities and really pleased with the good preparatory work that has been done on this project. So stay tuned later this year and into 2011 for more details on this project.
I'm also excited about the possibilities. Over the years, CFP Board has made good progress in establishing the CFP certification as the standard of excellence for financial planning. But the opportunities for CFP certification are still immense. Let me give you a little taste of that. Our research has shown that consumers are looking for a credible partner for financial planning, especially given the financial crisis. They don't know where to turn or who to trust. They're largely unaware of the CFP certification. And once aware of the CFP certification requirements, the education, the exam, the experience, the ethics, as well as the holistic approach to financial planning, it changes their perception of financial planning. And it changes how they look for financial planning advice. In short, they would be more likely to seek out a CFP professional. So there is a lot of opportunity here. All resources CFP Board puts towards consumer outreach and advertising campaigns are in direct alignment with our mission to benefit the public by granting the CFP certification and upholding it as the recognized standard of excellence for competent and ethical personal financial planning. Everyone in the CFP certificate community stands to benefit from a high-quality, coordinated marketing campaign to raise awareness of the CFP certification. This is a very important project. Let me say that again. This is a very important project. Please give us your input. Watch your emails for updates, and take time to visit our website to fill out our online survey when it's available.
And we actually have an opportunity for you to provide some input right now on this issue. We're going to do another quick poll, and on your screen is a question about the types of marketing resources that you would be likely to use if CFP Board provided them to you. We'll take a minute or two for you to respond, and then we'll share the results of the poll you can check as many of these types of materials as you would like. And we'll go quiet for a moment while you conduct the poll. Let's take a look at the results of this polling question. Online materials appears to be the most popular choice of those of you on the call today, followed by print advertisements and then some direct mail. Interestingly, some of you would not welcome any of these kind of materials, and I'm assuming that you want to do your own branding and marketing independent of CFP Board, so thank you for that feedback.
Or you have more business than you need.
That's possible.
You know, we truly value your input as we develop our future marketing campaigns. Again, we keep saying this, but please take the time to complete the survey. It'll come to you, or it'll come in a link to you soon via email. And take advantage of the opportunities to meet with us and share your thoughts.
Well, I look forward to seeing the future of CFP Board's marketing efforts. Consumer outreach is definitely something that benefits CFP Board, CFP professionals, and the public. I understand that there are also initiatives underway that update the CFP certification standards. Last year, CFP Board released a proposal that would require a financial plan development course, and you undertook a job task study that will have an effect on the CFP exam blueprint. Quite a few of our listeners have submitted questions specifically about updates to the CFP certification exam. Chuck, can you give us some background on that issue?
I'll try. Last year we conducted the 2009 job analysis study. This was a significant undertaking, and it was designed to capture information about the current practices within the financial planning profession to ensure our exam coverage is up to date and consistent with what the professionals are doing, what you, the professionals, are doing. The results determine the blueprint of future administrations of the exam, as well as the curriculum that education providers deliver to current and future CFP certificates. CFP Board has conducted a study of this type every 5 years. Our 2009 study took a slightly different approach. Before looking at a topic list, we stepped back and considered broader issues related to the professional practice of financial planning and what it means to be a CFP professional. We focused on the tasks associated with the delivery of competent and ethical financial planning, rather than focusing exclusively on the individual topics that may or may not apply to a specific financial planning engagement. We had several goals for this study. First, to better define the profession, we identify the important job tasks performed by a CFP professional. Second, to identify the principal topics in which the CFP professional must be knowledgeable. And third, to require more higher-order thinking skills on the CFP certification examination. For any of you old humanities people, this is Bloom's taxonomy.
None of us are willing to admit we know that.
Or that we're old.
A big part of the study was a survey of CFP professionals. We appreciate everyone who participated in the discussions for the job analysis study and the thousands of CFP certificates who completed all or part of the survey portion of the study. The results of that job analysis study have given us an updated examination blueprint that will be used for exams administered in March 2012 and beyond.
Earlier this week, CFP Board shared the new exam blueprint with our registered programs, and I'm pleased to share it with you today. Our existing exam blueprint has been organized to cover the financial planning related topics of our topic list. In contrast, the new blueprint is organized around the major tasks professional financial planners engage in as they provide financial planning services to their clients. We've organized these tasks into 8 different domains. As you can see, they follow very closely the 6-step financial planning process and our financial planning practice standards. The domains should look familiar. The first 3 follow the first 3 steps of the financial planning process as defined by CFP Board. Domain 5, communicating the recommendations, branches from the developing the recommendations step of the financial planning process and emphasizes the importance of communication within the financial planning engagement. And Domain 8, practicing with professional and regulatory standards, relates to all the other domains. The values here in red indicate the percentage of examination questions that will be represented for each domain.
Thanks, Bob. The domains do look familiar, but also very broad. Are there more specific sections within each domain?
Yes, the job analysis data supported 97 individual job tasks within these domains. The survey found each of these tasks both important to and widely practiced by CFP professionals. I won't address each of these tasks, but we'll run through them quickly on the screen. This will give you a flavor for how detailed they really are.
For those of you who may be wondering as we run through the new test blueprint, we will have these posted online, and we'll have a link from the home page where people can go to the new test blueprint. I think a lot of people will be happy with the emphasis on communications. The communications and ethics-related job tasks received the highest survey ratings in terms of importance. I would guess that's no surprise to many of the educators who've been working to prepare future CFP professionals and also to the firms that recruit young financial planners. In addition to the domains and tasks of the new examination blueprint, we've also released a list of principal topic areas. These were derived also from the 2009 job analysis study. They provide a framework for educational curricula as differentiated from the exam blueprint. We're also working with educational programs on the implementation of the new financial plan development course that will be required, that will be a required part of the curricula for all CFP board registered programs in 2012. Many people are asking, when will I have to participate in a financial plan if I'm in the program? People are grandfathered in the program if they enroll or matriculate into an approved registered program before January 1st, 2012. Those applying on or after January 1st to enter a program will need to complete a financial plan development course. Those applying under the challenge status, meaning that they hold another credential that CFP Board accepts in place of a course of study, will also be required to take the financial plan development course.
Let me add some general comments to that. The purpose of the requirement is basically to assess the competence and ability of future CFP professionals to actually prepare and deliver quality financial planning services to clients. The course would bridge theory and practice, require students to apply their knowledge, and help prepare them for their work with clients. Several registered programs have already incorporated courses like this in their curricula, And many of CFP Board's counterparts around the world have adopted standards requiring courses such as this. But a course of this type is not specifically addressed in CFP Board's previous educational standards. We've had ongoing discussions with registered program directors and faculty regarding the new course requirements. And next month, our Program Directors Conference will focus on best practices related to the course requirement and other instructional opportunities that allow the learner to integrate and apply course content.
Thanks, Chuck. And we have some time to take some of the questions that have been submitted by our listeners. And while our panel responds to your questions, you'll see some interesting facts and tidbits about CFP Board. Let's take this first question, and Kevin, maybe you can address this. Why isn't there more alignment between some of the large firms like Wells Fargo and others and CFP Board?
I think there is. A good alignment. Michael Shaw, who is our Managing Director of Professional Standards, has created a business model working group. And in fact, representatives of Wells Fargo or Wachovia are participating on that. But if at any time people somebody has a question or wants information from one of the large firms, please give our office a call. And Michael is the liaison to that business model working group. By the way, we are actively recruiting right now for a director of business development who will be the primary liaison to the major firms, and we're open. So if you or somebody you know might be interested in that position, please let us know, and hopefully when that position is filled, we won't have questions like this anymore. Dan?
Yes, maybe. Another question that has come in during the course of the program deals with the regulatory reform and the decision that CFP Board has made to pursue that legislation with the SEC rather than on a state level. Can you share your comments on why you decided to go that route?
Well, I think there's no surprise to that. The opportunity and the action was on the federal level. The House and the Senate were debating after the financial crisis. This goes back over a year. Financial reform. It was not being debated on the state levels. It was really being debated on the federal level. So we weighed in with what we thought was an important regulation. I would also suggest that if the professions out there, whether it's accounting, law, or medicine, were doing it again today, would they do it on a state level or would they do it on a federal level if they were doing it today? 100 years ago versus today, I think the landscape's a little bit different.
Let me add something to that. So, increasingly we hear practitioners who are practicing across state lines or who migrate at some point in their life and have clients in their previous life and their current life. And as you do that, you learn to appreciate the value of consistent regulatory environment.
I think consistent regulatory requirement is something a lot of certificants would welcome. Another question came in on that same vein is a question about whether CFP Board is working with the Department of Labor on giving employees independent financial advice. Is there any activity on that area?
We've not been working there. We have been working with the Department of Labor on target date funds and some other areas, but this is not an area that we've been working on.
Okay. Great. Thank you. A question that came in before the webinar asked about, is there a sample engagement letter for CFP professionals when providing financial planning? And then we had a question that came in during the program about whether or not a person working for a broker-dealer's RIA, can they assume that their firm's paperwork is meeting CFP Board's requirements? So anybody want to talk about that?
Well, we do have sample forms for the engagement letters, so the answer to that is yes, and they're available online at www.cfp.net. And if a person, I would encourage the person, while we don't give specific advice, but if a person had a specific question, most investment advisor representatives, most their forms do cover most of the materials, but we would be happy to provide general consulting or answer general questions about that at the CFP office.
Terrific. Thank you. waiting for my screen to change to, what is the current CFP Board's passing grade? Why is the current CFP exam's passing grade dependent on the number of people taking the exam? Now, Bob, you're a former counsel of examiner. Can you talk a little bit about how the pass score is determined? And is it really determined by the number of people taking the exam?
No, it's really not.
There are a lot of myths about how.
There are a lot of myths about it, and what we try to do is have consistency from cycle to cycle of the quality of the people that pass, which is why the pass rate may change depending on who's in the pool. So, as an example, in one cycle, if you have a smarter group, there may be a higher pass rate. And in another cycle, you may have a group that's maybe not quite as good, as competent, and they will have a lower pass rate. But it's all based on a modified Angoff method of scoring, and I will not explain it.
Okay.
Nor will I.
I'm impressed you remember modified Angoff.
But what I will tell you are there equator questions that are in every exam, and we use those equator questions to make sure that the person would, if they passed in one exam, they would pass in another exam as well.
So basically, you want to make sure that each exam you give is at least as difficult as previous exams, but not more difficult than previous exams.
Exactly.
Is that a way to describe that? Other groups that would use that kind of scoring, I think people would be familiar with the grad records or SATs,
any of the
CFA exam.
Any of the high-stakes examinations or the professions where they're testing.
Right.
It's part of that. We always talk about our examination being valid, reliable, and legally defensible, and that's important to maintain those three attributes.
For our audience, the next time you hear some of these myths, you now have something to quote.
A listener to the webinar today makes a comment, and I'd like to get your response to it, because the question is at the end of this comment. And the person comments that they think that we need to make it a goal to have high school seniors complete at least a full semester, if not an entire year, of personal financial planning skills. Is that something on CFP Board's radar?
I wouldn't say that it's directly on our radar, but I would say it's an admirable goal. Financial literacy is something that's very important to us, regardless of where it is and who it's targeted at, which is why we have our financial planning clinics. It's why we're doing our financial planning days in October with the Council of Mayors. Financial literacy is very important to us.
And we do work very closely with NEFI, the National Endowment for Financial Education, and they are working on a variety of different curricula that are targeted to high school and college level students.
And we might suggest that if you have a particular interest in that, going to that organization's website and getting on their mailing list and that kind of thing will satisfy that need to be more informed or to join into the challenge of educating high school seniors.
Good, thank you. Let's take another one. Sometimes in the past it felt like advocating for the public felt sort of like you were advocating against certificates. Has that changed? Was that ever the case?
I'll speak since I've been here the least amount of time between Bob and Chuck. I've heard that complaint, but look, we do have an obligation to benefit the public. But I would suggest that the public's needs and the certificate's needs are very closely aligned. The public wants access to competent and ethical financial planners, and CFP certificates have an interest in ensuring that those people holding themselves out as financial planners are competent and ethical as well. So, Dan, I think that we're in a very different place from maybe where we were in the past, and I maybe disagree a little bit with the premise of the question.
Okay, that's fine. We've been at this now for about an hour and 5. We're going to start to wrap up here and give everyone a chance to make some closing remarks. We've looked at a number of different topics. We've looked at CFP Board's efforts to influence the regulation that has finally come through Congress and is waiting President Obama's signature. We've talked about changes to the CFP certification exam and to the structure of the items that are leading to that exam. We talked a little bit about the new requirement that there be a financial planning requirement. And we certainly spent a fair amount of time talking about consumer outreach efforts and opportunities that certificates are going to have to contribute to that effort. What I'd like to do is ask any of you if you'd like to take a few seconds and make some closing remarks. Can we start with Bob?
Sure. We have
Current chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan, and thank you, everybody, for joining in today. Well, tomorrow is the 25th anniversary of the CFP Board, and when you look back and see how far we've come in 25 years, it really is remarkable to where we are today. We're very proud of the organization and where it is today and how it represents its stakeholders, the certificates, the public, and others. And we realize that this is just a point in the road. We're going to keep going. There's a lot more work to be done. There's a lot more work to do. When we talk about advocacy, we have the two studies. We don't have the legislation yet, and we have work to do there. When we talk about communications, we know the CFP mark is not as well known as it needs to be, and we have more work to do there. We've got the new Financial Planning Development course. We have the Financial Planning Days clinics in October. We have a new relationship with a public relations firm, advertising firm, Arnold Communications. We have new staff in D.C. So we're on a roll, we think, but we're not stopping. We're not stopping here. We're taking a few moments to pause and reflect a little bit on the past 25 years and how far we've come as an organization. But we want to look out for the next 5 years, 10 years, and 25 years and think about where we'll be then.
Thanks, Bob. Chuck, before you start, I think wouldn't it be good if we could put up that final poll question? We have one more poll question that's going to ask you to provide some input about the topics you'd like at the next webinar. So while Chuck is sharing his thoughts with you, and then Kevin, you'll be able to complete those questions at the same time. So that will come up while Chuck, go ahead.
Well, first of all, listening to Bob and listening to this entire webinar, the agenda and the activity is borderline exhausting. As in my role, coming in as 2011 chair, one of the things that I have on my agenda is to not get in the way and not undermine any of the things that have gotten off the ground. Keeping this momentum up, I think, is very important. Continuing to listen to all of the certificates, and particularly continuing to listen to the public and the various other stakeholders as we move forward in the agenda, and as we tweak and adjust things as we go along, I think is particularly important. You should know that we have, along with Kevin, a team at CFP Board that, in my experience, is unparalleled to work with as far as both an enjoyable experience with a bunch of incredibly competent and experienced people. And I would say the same thing about the Board of Directors. It is an unusual board in the level of engagement that it has, and the diversity of experience that's at the table, and we continue to work on that. And further, huge appreciation for the volunteers to CFP Board. They make a big difference, and they keep us focused on the things that are important.
Thanks, Chuck. We've covered a lot of ground today, and it certainly sounds like CFP Board is doing a lot of good things with lots of opportunities for people around the country to help contribute to that work. Kevin?
Indeed, and we would hope to involve even more certificants and other stakeholders in volunteer opportunities in the future. I just got the report for the end of June. CFP Board grew once again. We're now at almost 61,887 certificants, and it's a lively, dynamic group of people. And we welcome the participation and ask for volunteers because it is the lifeblood of the organization. We're going to be asking for your input again on the communications front as we begin to look at branding messages that resonate well with the public and look at opportunities for the future. We encourage you to check our website often, and especially if you have an interest in volunteering. The website again for volunteers is cfp.net/volunteers, and we'll let you know when opportunities come around.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin. Can we take a look at those poll results to see what kind of topics people were interested in? And certainly more information on public policy and outreach is a popular one. followed by, and there's strong interest in CFP Board's marketing and advertising, and the perspectives of CFP Board's leadership. So we're glad to see that. Thank you for your participation. Thank you all for participating today, for taking time out of a warm July afternoon when there's certainly any number of things you could be doing that might be more pleasant than listening to our little group, or serving your clients, which we know is something CFP certificates do well, often, and daily. So we look forward to talking with you again. CFP Board's next business update webinar, which will take place on Friday, November 12th, 2010. Thank you very much for your participation. We'd like to thank Bob and Chuck and Kevin. A recording of this presentation is going to be posted to CFP Board's website in the next week or so. So if there was anything you wanted to take some notes on, or you wanted to follow up with and so forth, you'll have a chance to listen to it. Also share that information with others who might not have had an opportunity to listen to this program. CFP Board welcomes your comments regarding this program and your suggestions for future programs, and you can send that to webinars@cfpboard.org. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, Dan.